Good evening. This is the Guilford Board of Education. It is Tuesday, January 27th. Tonight we are holding a public forum on the budget. The Board of Education officially received the draft budget from our Guilford Public Schools Administration and Dr. Freeman, our superintendent, several weeks ago. And every year we provide 2 evenings of public forum so that the public can come and share with us their thoughts and their comments on the budget now that we have a draft before us. Given the storm over the weekend, we actually had to postpone the first of these 2 meetings, which was to be held last night on Monday. So I do want to make sure that people know that that meeting has been moved to this Thursday, the 29th, here at Guilford High School. Same time, 7:30. So again, this is the first of 2 nights in which we are providing the Guilford community the opportunity to come and address the board on the budget. I do want to make sure that and remind the community that we will also receive that kind of input via email. Each of us has an email on the Guilford Public Schools website. We understand that there may be community members who cannot make it tonight or Thursday, but many ways that we can receive that information from you. We may spend some time tonight and Thursday, once we have heard all public comment, once we've heard from anyone who wishes to address the board in some discussion. But note that next Monday, February 2nd, we have a scheduled Board of Ed special meeting to discuss and possibly vote on a budget to put forth to the Board of Finance. We do not have to have that vote completed by that night if we are not ready. We do have our regular Board of Ed meeting on Monday, February 9th, and can delay a final vote until that night. So I'm saying that for people who are interested in kind of following our progress and understanding how we are getting to where we will finally get in terms of a final budget that we, the board, will then be sending to the Board of Finance. I do want to take a moment before we start public forum to just ask Dr. Freeman if there's anything you wanted to say before we start hearing from the public.
No, I think you've covered it.
Okay, so I do want to just make sure that everyone knows that the proposed budget is on the Guilford Public Schools website. I believe Dr. Freeman's presentation from our Board of Ed meeting on January 12th is also up on the website. That can provide some information, kind of condensed information or high points from that budget that could be helpful to folks. We're going to invite people who want to speak to come up to the podium. We're going to ask for your name and address.
There's a sheet behind.
There is a sheet, right, that we're going to ask. And if you want to wait until after you speak to write your name down, that's fine. Write your name and address. If there are any students or any children, anyone under 18, they should feel free to give their name but not their address. That is fine. If they just want to mention the school they go to, that's fine. Lastly, we're going to ask you to limit your comments to 3 minutes, and we are going to keep time in order to make sure that everyone has an equal opportunity to speak. Anything I've missed before we get started? All right. Really eager to hear what people have to share with us. So whoever would like to start, please, we welcome you to come up to the podium. Don't be shy.
Do you want me to have it buzz or not buzz? Buzz would be good.
Really loud.
That made me sweat a little.
Good evening. Michael Faulkner, 73 New England Road in Guilford. Cindy and I are going to be sharing a single statement tonight, but to stay within the 3-minute guidelines, we're going to be splitting that in half here. Good evening, members of the Board of Education. My name is Mike Faulkner, and I'm here to represent my family. I'm joined by members of the Guilford SEPTO Board, as well as parents who represent the broader community of families served by Pupil Services. We would like to begin by acknowledging the complexity of this year's budget season. We recognize the significant fiscal pressures facing the district, including rising insurance costs and negotiated salary increases that limit flexibility and make prioritization especially difficult. We appreciate the challenging environment in which these decisions are being made. That said, we want to express our disappointment that several staffing priorities raised by special education families earlier this year were not reflected in the proposed budget. These included an additional elementary speech-language pathologist, stipends for paraprofessionals working with students with the most significant needs, another BCBA, targeted incentives for direct service providers, and a full-time, in-district occupational therapist at the elementary level. These requests are grounded in real and ongoing service gaps that families and educators continue to experience. While we understand the financial constraints, we remain concerned that the absence of these investments will continue to strain staff capacity and impact the consistency and quality of services provided to students. At the same time, we are pleased to see the proposed increase in FTE staffing at the preschool level. With a steady rise in referrals and identifications coming from birth to 3, this position is a necessary investment. Early intervention is one of the most effective tools we have to improve long-term student outcomes, and maintaining strong staffing at this level is essential to ensuring high-quality services for our youngest learners. And with that, I'll turn it over to Cindy.
Good evening. Cindy Wilner, 10 Spindrift Lane. Also speaking on behalf of SEPTO, the Special Education Parent-Teacher Organization, and other families of children with special needs in the district. We would also like to address the proposed addition of an elementary special education coordinator position. While we are supportive of any additions that improve the quality and implementation of special education services, there has been understandable concern within the parent community about whether adding another administrative role is the most immediate priority, particularly when direct service positions were not funded. Through SEPTO's monthly meetings with the Director of Pupil Services and district coordinators, we have gained a clearer understanding of the administrative burden created by years of steady growth in the number of students served through Pupil Services. This sheer volume of PPT meetings at the elementary level has created an unsustainable workload. This reality increases the risk of compliance challenges and makes adherence to the strict requirements under federal special education law more difficult, exposing our district to the risk of lawsuits for procedural violations. When most available time is consumed by meetings and case management logistics, there is limited capacity for administrators to provide direct support to service providers, case managers, and school-based teams. At the same time, families have shared concerns that coordinators currently have limited direct interaction with families outside of annual meetings, and that the benefits of these roles are not always visible at the student level. Concern has also been expressed that caseload burden is felt beyond the elementary schools, and this position does not stand to address service implementation and compliance concerns felt beyond the elementary schools. After thoughtful discussion within our community, the consensus is this. While we respect the expertise of district leadership in assessing operational needs and staffing capacity, our support for this position comes with clear expectations. We expect this role to result in meaningful improvements in communication between service teams and families, stronger collaboration and morale among frontline staff, and greater consistency in how services and supports are implemented across elementary buildings. Ultimately, our goal is not to advocate for positions in isolation, but to ensure that staffing decisions translate into stronger systems, improved trust, better working conditions for educators, and most importantly, better outcomes for students. We look forward to continuing to work collaboratively with the board and district leadership to prioritize investments that support students with disabilities and the staff who serve them. Thank you for your time and consideration, and I have a list of names of people who have signed off on this letter, would like their names included. Mike and Christy Faulkner, Kelly Cosgrove, Meg Teep, Melissa Weimer, Cynthia Wilner, that's me, Caitlin Loomis, Tarshin Sethi, Katie McGrath, Geraldine Fayadry, and Ryan Vidrani, Ayla and Owen Davidson. Thank you.
Is there anyone else who would like to address the board tonight? Come on up.
Good evening. My name is Tyler Reggett. I'm at 31 Redcoats, Guilford, Connecticut, and I apologize. I kind of threw this together really quickly, but I just want to get my thoughts out here really quickly. First, I'm grateful for the new cell phone policy. I think you're doing a fantastic, and it's a wonderful implementation on, and even a model on how to improve educational relationship with technology in the classroom. However, I'm concerned it may not be enough, especially with regard to artificial intelligence. I recently noticed that my son has found a new distraction on his Chromebook, Gemini. How did he find it? Well, it was right next to his homework. Now, I have many thoughts about Google having access to our classroom and to our children's minds. I appreciate that it's a very complex subject and not something that would probably be addressed by a single school district. However, I'd like to really lean in on artificial intelligence. I appreciate it's the new frontier, so I can appreciate any educator that wants to help their student be on the cutting edge. However, I'm concerned that AI might be the next social media instead of the next graphing calculator for the classroom. I would urge the board to consider recent studies, including the Brookings Institute and the American Journal of Pediatric Medicine. They have released a whole bunch of recent articles that are fantastic reads that have shown that what we know about the field, which is vastly unknown at this point, but mostly is not positive. We're seeing AI and cognitive bias, cognitive offloading, dissemination of inaccurate mental health information, unhealthy body images, AI and the displacement of authentic human connection, and the enforcement of bad behavior. I personally, and this is just my opinion, would wish that the board would consider a policy prohibiting generative AI within the classroom. That being said, I realize that's kind of whack-a-mole, that there is always more issues and more tools out there, so I would ask that they consider reconsidering the policies, especially with the latest evidence, and this is a concern I wish to express, although I appreciate that you have many things on your table. So thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else who would like to address the board tonight?
Polly Reeder, 280 Sage Hollow Road. Try to keep this to 3 minutes. So we have, I think there are two possible low-hanging fruit with regard to transportation costs, savings possibly. There's the OLR, the legislative research report that the lawyers do for our legislature that I mentioned earlier in the fall that says specifically that school districts are not required to have a seat for every kid every day, which is like, because in what scenario is that ever going to happen? That could be a significant cost savings. I don't know if that's been looked into at all. And secondly, our superintendent, year after year, keeps raising the new tech, now AI capabilities, where we could probably gain bus efficiencies, thereby cost savings. So now further, I wanted to add to that, there was yet another sleep study out last year, which specifically, its point was over 3,000 kids, just 15 minutes more of sleep, and all these kids were already getting less than 8 hours, just 15 minutes more, those kids had lower heart rates, larger brain volumes, and more brain connectivity. So I think a transportation study or something, rather than one guy who's known it for decades doing it at his computer, but using AI and software and et cetera, we could possibly see some gains, which would be real for our kids' health. In addition, along with the chronic sleep deprivation of our teens, I had also referenced, I think in November, the study just out last year, sleep problems, decision-making, and suicide attempts during adolescence, which was kind of groundbreaking because it was longitudinal, over 8,000 teens, and it showed that poor sleep at age 14 was a stronger indicator of suicide attempts at age 17 than any other typical mental health risk factor. I mean, they're gonna have to rewrite, the books. So it's just so concerning. So, I mean, the question is sort of, do we care? Because it seems like we don't. Do you care? Because what we're seeing is that you don't, okay? And the science is even more clear for a later high school start time than it is for cell phones by far. And you guys have been outstanding in pushing for that, getting it to finally, it will still be happening, we're still waiting. And this is not even a budget issue, what I'm talking about. It is simply swapping the elementary and the high school. Is that a warning or is that 3 minutes?
That's 3 minutes, thank you.
Okay,
Thanks.
okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else who would like to address the board tonight? Any questions on the budget or? All right, I'm hearing none. We do have an opportunity, and I think we may want to take it, given that it's we have a little bit of time here, to maybe start some discussion, ask some questions. We've all been spending some time, I think, looking over this budget, and this might be a time to start asking questions that'll help us as we're trying to determine next steps. So I'm going to open up the floor to my colleagues if anyone wants to start. Anybody with questions for the administration or your colleagues?
I'll start.
All righty.
So we're at 7.13.
Yes.
And we have a job to do, and that is to examine the budget and understand where we might be able to be more fiscally responsible. Not to say that the budget is not fiscally responsible, but there is no doubt going to be questions from the community as well as the Board of Finance, who ultimately this needs to be presented to. I feel like we can go line by line, but that would be, really senseless when we're talking about such a high number where so much of it is what I call untouchable. Like, we know salaries, we know transportation, we know electricity, we know healthcare, right? We can get into a conversation around healthcare in terms of how we might be able to change that as a community in terms of searching for better options that will be, better for us in terms of quality healthcare for our employees and hopefully more fiscally responsible. But I think what we're going to be tasked with is getting to specific percentage numbers. And my question to you guys right now is, have you started the process of asking yourself, if I needed to get to X, whether that's 6%, whether that's 5%, have you started that exercise to see exactly what that looks like? And can we have an understanding of what that process looks like?
Yes, we continue to be working on recommendations that we will be able to bring to you on your February 2nd meeting that will help you to be able to pass a budget that might move to the Board of Finance at a point lower than 7.13. The challenge in us putting that together for you is that approximately 70% of this budget is contained in salaries and benefits. While we have identified the 5 most significant cost drivers for you, they're in that 23% of the budget that isn't salaries and benefits, there's a much longer list of other cost increases as well. There was a slide that in passing referred to that as various other increases due to inflation. So it becomes really difficult to be able to say that we could just not absorb the increase in software, or other insurance increases are something that we could ignore. The list of other recommendations that we are working to prepare for you will be heavy in other positions. Again, usually at this time of year, we're able to say, here's the list of enhancements or investments that are included in this administrative draft. There are only 2 that we have included. We heard tonight reference to positions and supports that were asked for during previous public input that are already not in this budget. So what that means is reductions that this board may entertain will be backwards. Those reductions will be pulling us backwards. We have 8 interventionist positions in the school district. We will be making suggestions that we look at that number. We went from 6 to 8 last year. We have 14 coach and specialist positions in the district. Will we need to move back in those positions? We have paraprofessional positions that we know are always a risk. Now, some of those paraprofessional positions are non-instructional. We can look at those. Others are instructional, and while we may choose to back them out of a budget, if they are needed, bless you, if they are needed to deliver specific services, then they must be filled even if they have not been budgeted for. We will be making recommendations in the areas of custodial and maintenance. We will be making recommendations in the area of technology. So yes, we are putting that list together. We are not at this point, but we can, bundling it to say this package will bring us from 7 to 6.5. This package would bring us, essentially we'll be suggesting them. Some of them are in ranges. There have been some of the reductions that we've already suggested that may need to go further. So we've suggested 2 positions at Baldwin. That is a number that could possibly go higher. We've suggested 1 FTE at the high school based on course selections. That is very much a number that could go higher because of the way that the high school schedules. Now, we were having conversation just earlier tonight in the Curriculum Instruction and Assessment Committee, pointing out that in some of the performance areas that the state rates us, like the ability of students to take arts classes, while the state is encouraging us to create more opportunities for students to take more art classes and raise our grade in that area, making decisions like this to offer fewer pottery sections or fewer tech sections will in fact make it harder for students to be able to place those items. So we're looking at the flexibility and options that we afford in the high school versus course loading and class size at the high school. So all of those are areas that we will be bringing more recommendations. It is not the type of year where we're going to have some of the easy choices and we will be able to say we can take a little more out of electricity and we can take a little more out. We'll have a few of those areas, but this budget, just to get to the 7% mark that we are at, already assumed many of those reductions.
I've done some kind of modeling that I've sent your way in terms of, rolling back certain line items to historical spending limits, actual spending versus rolling back to our current budget right now while leaving those untouchables, with the increases in place. So in those kind of hypothetical situations, let's take freezing it at the current fiscal year budget, right? If we take every line item and froze it exactly where it was for 25, 26, going into 26, 27, but left those increases in place for the untouchables.
Yep.
What are the implications there?
In almost every case, but to greater and lesser degree, all of those line items include a certain degree of inflationary increase. And so in order to hold any of those line items at this year's or last year's expenditure, it would require us to offer up more offsetting reductions that, again, would likely either need to fall into the area of program elimination or reduction or staffing changes. And those are going to be difficult to find.
So on that level, right? So I'm not attacking the textbook line, right? So I don't want you to look at this and saying John wants to.
No, I totally get it.
But I'm looking at that line in a lot of other, purchase service lines and whatnot. So if I'm looking at something like textbooks, right, which is showing an increase from last year.
Yep.
And I'm asking myself, if we continuously increase this line year by year, yet historically underspend on textbooks, what would happen hypothetically if we slashed that in half this year, right? If the proposed budget for textbooks was slashed in half this year, knowing that over the last 5 years, we have increased the textbook budget. And again, I'm not advocating for.
No, I get it. I understand.
I'm just trying to get an understanding of, in a year like this, where we want to try to be as fiscally responsible with certain line items as possible, all line items, but specifically ones that we're asking to spend more. What would be the implications specifically to that line?
So those are two really good examples. Purchased services is a place where we buy a service from a vendor, and most of them have increased their expense. So if we want to continue offering that service, our choice would either be to absorb the increase or try to find ways to reduce the services, and in some we can't. Some are safety measures. Some are contracted garbage removal. You can't just have them pick it up every 2 weeks instead of every week. Textbooks, however, is very much a place where we could flatline to last year. That might require us holding on new course offerings that the board had previously approved because we won't be able to provide the text. It would mean not replacing texts in certain courses that are perennials and that we're simply either going to use the dog-eared one, right? And so that is a place where we could say we're going to hold. Now, some of those numbers over the last recent years have been driven by state changes and state mandates, new graduation requirements, or specifically the Science of Reading mandate that required us to pump a couple $100,000 into the purchase of new materials because the state was now mandating the way that we were going to instruct and assess reading instruction. We're through most of that. There are some holdover purchases, but that's very much a line where we could say we're not going to replace texts and we're not going to buy new texts this year.
Defer it, right? I think that's, we're going to hear the word defer a lot this year because I think a lot of what we're talking about this year is having to defer expenses that we'd love to be making right now, but deferring it until next year, because we just, need to be responsible where we can.
The textbook line is already a fraction of what was in the original draft when we were still in 2 digits. We've already done that to a degree, and absolutely we need to have the conversation about do we do it to a further degree or all the way to flat funding. It would, and I don't have these available, but I can have these, if not for Thursday, then certainly for Monday, a specific response about what courses may not be offered or held back even if they were deferred, even if they've been approved already. Yeah, so it's going to be mostly social studies texts that we're talking about. We can have a more specific answer, but
And these are specifically new courses.
They're new courses or new texts for perennial courses because the text that we were using is becoming outdated. But again, I'm giving you the shape of it. We can have specifics for you, if not this Thursday, then certainly for Monday.
And on that same textbook question, I'm looking at page 84. Are we talking about this whole conversation? Are we talking about the district line for textbooks? Because it looks like we've got textbooks broken out per school, and then we've got
That's correct.
district where we're seeing the largest jump.
Yes.
So why do we differentiate, I suppose? Like, why are some listed under schools and then the large increase under district?
So the ones that are listed under schools are the things that we need to purchase annually in order to keep the courses running. So for instance, the materials that go with our reading program that are consumable, our math program that are consumable, they get repurchased. Those are listed in the school lines.
We hate this word, but think workbook.
Yes, I was just going to say.
Yes.
Things kids are
we-
writing
yes.
in and need a new copy of.
A consumable text,
Yeah.
correct.
Yes.
Not edible.
Right. The district line is purchases that would be part of curriculum revision, and that's because social studies is in curriculum revision.
Okay.
And many of the courses at Adams have never had a resource, whether that's a textbook or a digital resource, and many of the high school resources are old and need replacing. So originally, that was looking at a new textbook. Well, originally, when I proposed, it was looking at a new textbook for every student represented in those grade bands. Then we cut that in half, and I believe that's what you're seeing there.
Okay, thank you.
Wait, do you mind if I ask a question? This is going to be jumping around a little bit. Linda, this may be a question for you if it's just that I don't understand it. I'm on page 47, and I'm looking at FTEs, which seem to go up by 2, but the totals are going up by 4.5, and I'm not understanding why.
47?
Page 47.
You're looking at the paras, not the FTEs, right?
I'm looking at paraprofessional salaries, and I'm looking at the FTE lines, and the sum of the FTE lines don't
Yeah, we had the
align.
we saw the same thing.
Showing 2.5, but down below it's showing
4.5.
4.5.
Right.
And what it looked like to us when we reviewed it is that it went up to 2.5 by the original requested number of 91 last year, but that was reduced by 2.
Well,
Is what it looked like. That's how it looked like to us. But yeah, we came up with the same 4.5 increase in paras.
because we're seeing an almost 8% increase there, I'm interested in understanding particularly what's
The
going on.
left side math is
Yeah,
correct.
so
The
page
reduction
43.
is showing. It should be 99.5. It's reduced by 2. It's 97.5.
Yeah, 99.
Linda, I'd suggest that we can get back to the board on this on Thursday.
Okay.
Yeah, let us look at this and we'll answer.
Thank you.
We can answer this question Thursday
Page
evening.
47 look like they're kind of we're at, like the same question can be asked on
Yes.
both pages. It's like it's reflected on one but not on the other. So maybe we have a fun little typo.
And then
Yeah.
we have, because on page 43.
Which we're
we have
hoping,
a minus
come on, typo. Represents
So,
that-
I'm sorry,
really large
those
amount of
three
money
page
that we
numbers
don't need
again
to
were?
spend.
42, 43, and 47.
Okay, so Linda, 42, 43, 47, we will look at those and we will answer these questions on Thursday evening.
Thank you, that would be.
Can we talk about Chromebooks?
Sure.
John brought that up a little bit when we talked about lease items. So this is page 94. So if we do the math, we're guessing that if we're buying Chromebooks at just certain grades, right? So kids are getting elementary, 5th and 9th. That's the only time that we're purchasing new Chromebooks. So it's not 13 grades that are getting new Chromebooks every
No,
year,
we
right?
never replace the whole stuff.
So what is our per Chromebook cost? Like if we wind up figuring out per year what we're paying for a Chromebook, it feels like our per Chromebook cost for a Chromebook lease is really high.
Do we want to come back with that on Thursday night, or is that something, Kevin and Linda, that you want to answer now?
Do you know how much we pay per Chromebook?
It's around 400, a little over.
So it'd be $400 per Chromebook, and then that is carried across a 5-year lease. And remember, the lease has expanded. It, at this point, includes Chromebook purchases that are rolling so that the stock never all gets to be 5 years old all at the same time.
Okay.
It includes some infrastructure components for the technology system, and for the last several years, it has included some truck purchases, and this year it does include one 5-year lease of a new plow truck as well. That's what's included in the equipment lease that we are proposing for this year.
Okay.
Question about the lease. I know we've talked about this before, but how does that $635,000 show impacted on the budget? Is it only the years, if it's a 5-year lease, is it only the 1 year of the lease that
Yes.
shows reflected in this
Excuse me.
budget?
The estimate is just on about $147,000.
Okay, so it's a fifth.
In the budget for the
Right. It's roughly 1/5 carries in this year's budget, and then that is carried with the 4 other leases that we've done, right? We're, again, taking a 5-year lease every year and always rolling
So
one off.
deferring a plow truck would, in fact, help us a little bit this year, but we'd still see it next year.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right. We used to purchase those vehicles outright. It was Mr. Sands a few years ago who asked us why we weren't buying vehicles the same way we were buying Chromebooks. And it made a lot of sense. And so now we're trying to replace one each year and carrying a series of leases rather than driving one into the ground and then having it to buy outright.
Okay, so that means if we're looking on page 94 because the math is really easy, at the maintenance vehicle plow truck for $125,000, really only $25,000 of that is in this year. This is
Correct.
just the 5-year total.
If we
Okay.
did without that truck this year, it would only save this year's
Okay.
budget. It would save us
That's helpful.
$125,000 over 5
Plus
years.
whatever the interest is.
Right.
Yes, but it would save us
But it's not like
minimally this
we
year.
can't scrap a 6-figure number just getting rid of that. Okay, thank you. That's helpful.
Not in 1 year.
I mean,
no.
it's not helpful. I wish it were helpful.
I wish it
but
were more
it's-
helpful. I
It
apologize.
helps me understand it. Thank you.
Excuse me? Can we ask questions still, or is this just you guys asking questions amongst yourselves?
This is asking questions. I did notice, because we ended the public forum at 20 minutes in, and I know we've had at least one person join us who may or may not be interested in talking. As long as my colleagues agree, I'm happy to kind of end our discussion with a brief public forum, because I think it's perfectly reasonable to show up to a public forum and think there's still opportunity to say something 20 minutes in.
Yeah, we just won't be able to engage really
That's right.
in conversation.
That's right.
Dr. Balistraci, I also think it's fair to remind everybody that folks listening to this conversation, either in person or on Zoom or on TV, who have questions, could certainly send them to you or to me,
Absolutely.
and they could be addressed publicly in future meetings.
Absolutely. So I will open an opportunity for a brief public comment after we have some discussion. I do want to make sure that board members, as we're diving into this, as we always do, can start asking our questions, and then a reminder to all of us to please feel free to send me questions by email that I will compile and forward to Mrs. Trudeau, which prevents her receiving duplicate questions.
Right.
Go ahead.
So from the beginning of our conversation a few weeks ago, as I understand it, we've already reduced the number of people that we had on the budget by 5 or 8 positions.
So the budget that I presented 2 weeks ago that sits at the current 7.13% assumes a reduction of 8 teaching positions and 1 clerical position. It then also assumes the adding back in of 1 10-month administrative position and a 0.6 teaching position.
So a net of about 6 reductions.
It's really important to note that 2 of those positions that are being reduced were unbudgeted this year to begin with. And so while it is a real reduction in staffing, those first 2 they generate no savings in the budget. the next 6 generate a reduction to the budget.
And each percent of reduction of the budget is about 800,000?
Correct.
So if we wanted to get from 7.1 to 6.1,
800.
okay, we're talking about an $800,000. I'm talking now about orders of magnitude. We can talk about line items, but the order of magnitude this year, what we're facing compared to all the years most of us have been on this, is a challenge.
And it's worth noting as you're doing that a teacher's salary is generally budgeted approximately $65,000. And so to get to $800,000, you're talking, and most other employees make less than our teachers do. So you're talking about 10 to a dozen positions to recognize an $800,000 savings. We will certainly provide other options for you, but remember, all other options outside of positions only represent 20 to 23% of the total budget.
So what I'm saying is that structurally we're hemmed in how we can save money, and we're so structured in that it ends up, in this case, being about people. It's not about plow trucks or electricity. It's about we're facing reduction in force in ways that we have not faced in a decade. And that only gets us to 6.1. Imagine if we were forced to go below that. And I have no idea how much the community can tolerate, will tolerate reduction in order for us to get, without not realizing that the reduction is really hurting the core operation of the institution. So we have a dilemma. We're not really advancing where we are. We're trying to figure out how to minimize going backwards. And even 1% is already a challenge. And in previous years, we've been reduced 2% on lower budgets by the Board of Finance. So how do we even have a conversation with the larger public about, I mean, if I knew now that the public would say, it's terrible that you're talking about 7 or even 6%, but we understand the consequences of that, and we would like to support, a higher rather than lower level. Don't cut as much as just on the basis of numbers. And I don't know, we're trying to figure out how do you get a budget passed, which is, we got to do that every year. On the other hand, we're trying to figure out how do you give people the value of the education they're paying their taxes for. And number one. Number two, if we make the big reductions this year, we may not see the results of that for 2 years.
Right.
And that, so there's a lot of my concern is how do we have a public conversation in ways that we get better understanding of what's facing us before we make arbitrary decisions just to get the budget down, or to put it a different way, if we knew what the public would think about this at the same level that we have the number of dollars, would they do the same thing we would do? Before we go to a vote, before we go to a referendum. Otherwise, we're going to a second referendum.
And I don't think you meant it this way, but I do want to identify the word arbitrary, because I don't think it's arbitrary, right? I think I've been on the board for 14 years, and twice the budget's gone down in that time, maybe 3 times. I'm trying to remember. I'm looking at Dr. Freeman because he has been with us for 14 years. And once it went down twice. And the lesson that we learned, or I'll be careful, the lesson I learned the time it went down twice, is that the Board of Finance, after it went down once, was feeling really, I don't want to put words in their mouth, I think confident about the energy, time, and substance of the budgets that the town and the Board of Ed had put forward. And so after it went down once, cut a small amount before sending it out a second time, and it went down again. And so what that means is we're looking at a 7.13% budget with a great deal of concern that it will be supported at a referendum, and trying to determine, much as you just said so carefully, without knowing
What the tolerance is.
Yes.
what kind of decisions we have to make so that the budget does pass with cuts that we've made that have been challenging, instead of making fewer cuts and then having to make a lot more later because the budget doesn't pass. It's a challenging situation to be in. But I do want to just make sure I don't see it as arbitrary. I just see it as very challenging because of the context I just laid out. And so I think what who's ever watching us now is seeing us kind of considering all kinds of things here, right? Looking at line items that are smaller, looking at line items that are bigger, considering items that could be deferred potentially, although we fully understand that anytime we defer something, it's harder to get it back or get it back to the levels it was before, because that means an increase next year. So,
I do think it's worth noting, I almost wish that we had recorded the meeting that we had earlier this evening. We spent from 6 to 7:30 discussing ways that we could improve our performance in the school district and how we can teach better and how our students can learn more and perform better. And we spent that whole meeting talking about how to do better. I do think that a key in the conversation over the next several weeks is going to be how do we minimize any harm that is done to respond to those very real fiscal concerns that we must respond to, so that we don't end up doing lasting harm that will be very hard to recover from in 1 or 2 budget seasons.
Yeah,
That's the one.
I'm going to be unpopular. I'm used to it. I would be interested in either Thursday or Mondays in seeing some data. I love, right, that we've built up the SRO program. You know, my opinion on the monitors, but I'd like to see some actual data, because the things that I'd feel more comfortable with cutting are things that don't directly impact the children directly, right? Like teachers, paras, things of that nature in the school. I mean, SROs definitely touch the kids, monitors less so. But I'd be interested in, especially maybe the numbers of the SRO at the elementary schools and how many times they've had to respond. I'm wondering if it's something that maybe we need to cut that down to 2 or something like that. I'm interested to see what the numbers are, what the calls are, before I ever propose or think of something like that.
We can certainly bring the budget numbers that would be related to those positions. I can ask the principals for anecdotal evidence. It is going to be difficult to provide our SROs. When I talk about the SROs in the school, I make it very clear that in Guilford, the uniformed police officers in Guilford are in our schools to protect our students, not to police our students. So we have very few calls that would have been logged. It is the role the SROs play in our buildings are to be visible. They are there to be a patrol presence. They are there to send the message that our schools are protected, and they are there literally to be a first responder should that ever happen. It's difficult to count the negatives, and so the other, as an example, I'll talk about the Sandy Hook Promise program that we use now. I'll jump in and say Sandy Hook Promise does not cost us a dime. It is fully funded by the Sandy Hook organization, but I know I know in my heart that Sandy Hook has helped us to avoid harm. It has helped us to ensure that students didn't harm themselves and that students didn't act on poor decisions because of that tool being in place. But I will never be able to quantify that. It is hard to count an incident that didn't occur. So we can log the tips that we've received through Sandy Hook. We can give you those. The SROs are even harder because it's not a call-in. It is a conversation a principal had with the SRO, a conversation that we asked the SRO to have with a student or have with a parent. So I'll try to pull together some of that anecdotal. I know that we're not going to have it. What I do know is that since the SROs have been in our school system, we have not seen increases in suspension rates. We have not seen increases in expulsion rates, and we have not seen increases in arrests on campus, which are often the outcome when the SRO is policing the student body, and that's not our model. And so again, yeah, we'll be happy to. I can talk about it with numbers and with budget numbers, and I'll pull some anecdotal information from principals as well.
And I want to be very clear, the choices that Guilford has made in their SROs is astounding. They're just each one is equally as fabulous as the last. I don't ever want to disparage the police department or anything like that, but when you're looking at numbers and maybe an SRO and a monitor versus a special ed teacher, say, these are hard decisions to make. They're still going to have a job. It's just maybe not supplemented by the board, and that's where I'm coming from.
Yep. I will also note, we'll have budget numbers on both of those. Remember, the SROs is a shared cost, so we pay a portion of the salary, the police department pays a portion of that salary, and then the monitors, and remember, we have two different levels of monitors. The monitors originally went into place with pandemic funding that has now expired, and we've brought them on, but we will have full cost impacts for both of those.
And are you still doing it where they're possibly making it a full day with the lunch recess? Has that panned out as well?
Essentially at Baldwin in Adams in the high school, the monitors have been new additions, and it's a fully different position. At all of the elementary schools, the monitor has been restructured, including the pay scale, and it is essentially a lunch and recess monitor position, and we've simply moved the start and end times to cover the full school day rather than just the compressed lunch and recess period. So again, they're all monitors, and they have, there's two different pay scales and there's two different sets of expectations.
Others?
Yeah.
Again, in the name of what would happen if?
Yep.
What would happen if we left special services at $1.25 million? It's seeing a 20% raise to $1.5 million.
Special services or contracted services for special education, Linda?
Again, I'm just calling it out. It's well above inflation, obviously. So there's obviously additions in there, I would assume, or renegotiations.
Well, and to large degree, those are services that we provide to students who we are able to keep in district who might otherwise be outplaced and would therefore, it would be more expensive to pay for that student to be.
That all falls within here?
Yes.
Okay.
So just anecdotally, we spent $1,505,000 on contracted services
Over
last
budget.
year.
Okay, so this is within actual spending?
Yes.
Okay.
And again, while the contracted services are going up approximately $250,000 this year, the tuition expense is going down by $483,000 this year. So it is almost a direct offset. Again, students that we can keep in district, we provide them a better service, and we can do it at an efficiency by keeping them here rather than paying a full outplacement.
Similar to that, much lesser of an impact is professional development. Again, this is just in the name of if we kept professional development flat at $120,000 versus raising it to $137,000. What are we looking at as an impact if we just kept it flat this year?
All of the services that we receive for professional development cost more now, so that's really what you're seeing in that increase. The challenge in reducing that is hypothetical in that we are being told that we should expect that title grants will be funded less or not funded next year, and that's not specific to Guilford or to Connecticut. That's at the federal level. The Title II, which is the primary professional development grant, will not be funded next year. So it's anticipatory, but it is a potential impact for learning.
And the impact, again, would be in that previous meeting, we looked at our data and our performance with all the state measures this year. In the very last slide was a slide of what we're doing to be better next year. Several of those items would be reduced or eliminated if we were to flat fund the professional development money. Well, they'd be reduced. They wouldn't necessarily be eliminated. But if we're also looking at possible reductions to the coaching cohort, which is PD brought internally, both of those things will start to impinge on the adult learning that happens in this district.
And part of the teacher growth plan for next year involves peer support for teachers, is that right? So if we were to cut coaching or professional development, might the new teacher educator growth plan take the place of some of those programs?
The educator growth plan actually requires the support of coaches. They're written into that plan, and they are the ones who facilitate that peer support.
The most important component of peer modeling is the discussion and the debrief that happens. For a long time in education, we believed that teachers would get better through osmosis. If we put a new teacher in the back of a veteran teacher's classroom, or if we put a struggling teacher in the back of an effective teacher's classroom, the learning actually comes when those three people sit down and talk about what happened, talk about what I saw in your classroom, and then go and practice it with the support of a coach in my classroom. And so yes, it's important, but it doesn't happen without the support of that internal professional developer.
Continuing, sorry to jump around, a question on co-curricular salaries. I know and fully support, right, that we have increases in stipends for class advisors, musical directors, et cetera. Is there a new position, though, that has the increase to that extent?
42,000.
It's 40, oh, sorry, that would have been clear, 40, page 40.
Yeah, an increase of 42,000 at the high school.
There was a lot of revision work and correction and clarification of co-curricular stipends that was done as part of the teacher's contract.
Yep.
Right. So Mr. Hamill did a ton of work going through and cleaning up the list, making sure that we were accounting for every stipend that is out there.
Okay.
This is another line that has been typically overspent because we weren't picking up all of the stipends that were actually out there.
Okay.
So that's a more accurate list of what's actually being paid or potentially could be paid as per the contract.
Okay, so we're not, obviously, as it says here, and we knew this, stipend has been added for an assistant to the lecturer, but the increase is not an additional, because there's stipends, 61,000 seemed like a lot, but you're saying this was a whole accounting for identifying, including increases that we voted on for the teacher contract. Okay.
There were stipends that had been added over the years that weren't listed in the contract. So we are now picking up everything that is listed. We eliminated some that have not been paid. There was a lot of revision to that list, and what is being budgeted is a much more accurate reflection of what we've been paying.
In addition to the corrections, that also includes the increases, which aren't, but I think it's worth explaining that the increase for co-curricular activities like clubs and other activities, those stipends increased by 3%. The increase for athletic coaching positions increased by 5% because we recognized an importance in investing in the athletic coaching positions.
Sure.
And the stipends that are associated with the instructional coaches have been flatlined in this new contract. There is a 0% increase for all of the next 3 years for those instructional coaching stipends. So the stipends increase at varying rates within that contract.
So I'm not sure I was aware that the coach's stipend also is in the co-curricular.
The instructional coaching teaching position includes a stipend that is added to it as well as the salary.
No, that I understood, but it's represented, it's in this
Is it
budget
in
line.
there as co-curricular, or is that carried in salary?
It's carried in salaries, but if you, when you
that's what
look
I
at it in
thought.
the contract, it's listed
Right.
in that kind of in
Okay.
that section.
Okay.
I just
Carried
wanted,
in the salary.
yeah, and I just wanted to make sure that we noted the varying ways that we talked about those increases as we went through teacher negotiations this year.
Yeah, okay.
The one thing about pages 39 and 40, since we're talking about them, is there's actually no numbers of people in each of those sections, whereas everywhere else in the book, it gives, like if you look at page 40, not 41, maybe more me, 42, right, general office, 5 FTE. When you talk about head coaches, assistant coaches, all those, there's no actual numbers associated with those, like how many of each.
Got it. Has anybody else noticed the ominous music that's been playing? I'm sorry.
A little background. Are there other questions that? Yes, you have another?
Yes, page 72, the energy performance contract. Is that anything that we can, like, what is that?
We've had that for a long time.
It was a very large energy performance contract that was done in conjunction with the town a number of years ago that received substantial electricity savings at the time, but now we have to pay this back, and it is a set payment schedule for, I think it might be a 20-year, it's a long-term contract.
The ZREX, if I remember, it was a very complicated grant-funded program where the state would come in, audit all of our buildings, help us to bring down our energy spend, and then we were locked into this agreement over the life of the agreement. We can't stop paying it.
Got it. And it can't be bonded?
It's not a bondable purchase, no. It's a contract that we entered into. I think it probably helped us long-term. I think that and again, it's difficult to account for costs that have been avoided. So we took this cost on.
To save money.
To save money, but
Yep.
now we have to pay that cost.
Okay.
I'm not sure I described it well, so I'm also going to ask a question that someone asked me, which is to best distinguish the site improvement line under capital from the safety, sanitation, upkeep of buildings and grounds under purchased services. The headings would seem to suggest it, but again, I would like to make sure I gave a reasonable explanation, or I need to get back to this person.
Safety, sanitation, and upkeep generally refers to contracts into which we have entered, like garbage removal. And some of it is mandatory inspections, but it falls into the category of contracts that we need to keep up annually. Site improvement is a very small, discretionary, essentially preventative maintenance fund. Years ago, we talked about trying to target 1% of the overall budget, and so it is the fund that we use to replace carpeting when it begins to get worn and sticky and stained. It is the fund that we use to replace ceiling tiles when they begin to sag. And so in years past, we would also try to refurbish 1 or 2 classrooms a year. Out of that budget, we have not done that in some time. It may be used for a maintenance catastrophe that wouldn't otherwise be covered by insurance or a vendor. And so if there is a flood in a bathroom and it causes damage to tiles and to sheetrock and it needs to be replaced, if the flood was because Saturday activities plugged to the toilet rather than a pipe that we can, that would be covered by insurance, then site improvement would be used to cover those. It is essentially response, preventative maintenance, and when the year allows, enhancement of the learning spaces. But it's for projects that fall below the capital bondable
Right.
level.
Okay. I think the confusion came for them in the purchase services line saying upkeep of buildings and grounds, but I think I did a decent job. and
How
you have
close was that?
confirmed.
Got it
Okay,
exactly.
excellent. Thank you. Other questions at this moment?
John, I think to your point, site improvement would again be one of those lines. Did we maintain a slight increase in site improvement, or we're already flat funded? So, right, we're already flat funded at site improvement for this year. That's a line where you could go backwards, right? That is a line in a tough budget season. Do you go backwards by $65,000 because that's a teacher salary? Do you go backwards by $130,000 because that's two teachers, right? That is the kind of place now. 20 years ago, that had been happening consistently, and we had 7 buildings that had all fallen into varying states of disrepair. We have built our way out of that maintenance deficit. To do it for 1 year wouldn't be the end of the world, but do you tempt a maintenance deficit for a year or two in order to protect some of those positions that have direct impact on kids?
Right, all to gain 0.1%.
Exactly, but when you're trying to add up 20 items to get to 800,000, do you take 130,000 reduction?
Just highlighting the hill we have to climb.
Yes.
I say some things here with all of you and in the team with the office
Say it
during the
differently.
day. I take the opposite position. Yes, but those are the kinds of conversations we're going to need to have.
All right.
Down that end of the table, Keith.
Do we have another question down there? Go ahead, Arnold.
I was just going to make the point that if you took away the health insurance increase,
I wish I could.
we're at like a 4.1% budget.
Yes.
So I just want the town to know
Yes.
that.
Yes.
Make that abundantly clear.
And I think it's also important to add that another 2.5% of that is contractual salaries that are well-deserved for our teaching staff.
Yeah.
So, on the surface, going to the town with that is this is why you're seeing an increase.
Yes.
Where, this is a well-deserved contract. It's very different than that. It's a very different conversation. That gets kind of pushed to the side when we're talking about a significant number.
Yeah.
So I agree with what you're saying.
And not only was it well-deserved, it's in line with
Everywhere else in the
contracts
state.
across the state,
100%.
all sorts of
Yes.
avenues
Yep.
and different types of.
Not only is it well-deserved, if we didn't do it, we would not be competitive. We would not keep the teachers that we currently have in Guilford if we hadn't settled the contract the way we settled the contract. They would leave, they'd leave to go to places that paid them different.
Rob, did you have a question?
Yeah, I do have a question. Just going back to the Chromebook question. So if I'm understanding it correctly, we basically split out our overall Chromebooks across 5 years, something like that. So we're always renewing them. How many Chromebooks in total are we talking about across the entire district?
It's got to be 2,500, Kevin?
Yeah, basically one.
So it's, if our enrollment is close to 3,000 students, it's probably 2,500 or close to 3,000 Chromebooks.
Are there any Chromebooks included for teachers or parents or anything like that, or is it just students that's included in that?
Students have Chromebooks. We're currently at this time still providing staff members with laptops, either a Macintosh or a Windows laptop, and that would be part of the lease as well. And the staff laptops are refurbished in the same roughly 5-year cycle.
Is that included within that Chromebook line on the capital lease? Or is that somewhere else?
Are there no laptop purchases this year as part of the lease?
It's not, there's not a rotation this year.
Okay, so there's no required laptop purchase this year. Other years, you would see a laptop number, and yes. And we don't do laptops for the teachers because they rely on them to a significant degree for instruction, for grading, for maintaining communications through Google Classroom, and so the laptop tends to have a greater functionality than the Chromebook would for the teaching expectation.
Thank you.
You have a question, I think?
No, I'll just ask it.
You sure?
Yeah, it doesn't necessarily.
Okay.
Just want some definitions.
I'm going to ask if anyone has one more question, and then I do want to open up to public comment again, so we don't keep people waiting too much longer. And then we can adjourn for this evening. We'll be back on
Do this again on
Thursday.
Thursday. Do it all again on Thursday.
Does anyone have a last? No. I then have a last question, which is just that I know bonding is still in.
We have a bonding recommendation that we can pass out to the board tonight.
Okay, great. We don't have to discuss it. I just didn't know if we
Yep.
had. Okay. So I do then. Sorry.
Would you just like me to highlight it?
Sure. Great.
So while we are working on a new 10-year calendar with Fryer and Associates based on their facility study, there are two projects that we thought should not be delayed for even one more year while we enter into a new 10-year calendar. One of them is a partial roof replacement at Adams. So I just want to make it clear that even though the facility study is taking a really serious look at Adams and we're looking at the expected lifetime left in Adams moving forward, a section of the roof, particularly over the gymnasium, is to the point that even if we decided that we were going to start a project tomorrow and move out of Adams in 5 years, this work needs to be done. The roof needs to be replaced. So there is a partial roof replacement at Adams. I believe the roof that is over that section of the gymnasium is somewhere between 30 and 40 years old at this point. It's been put off. It needs to be replaced. And then the Fryer report did have a number of safety recommendations that they had made. These are primarily outdoor safety recommendations. They would be traffic control. These would be things that would keep a car from being able to drive up onto sidewalk areas used for dismissal, playground areas used during the school day. We see these as important enough to begin moving forward and not delaying for a year. So the roof replacement at Adams comes in at approximately $1.5 million. These small safety upgrades come in at approximately $119,000, and then there is A&E for future projects coming in at $172,000. This would be a total bond request for $1.8 million. We would expect before budget season next year to be able to provide the board with a projected 10-year maintenance calendar moving forward.
Okay.
Do we have quotes and whatnot to base that Adams number off of?
I will have to check with Mr. Gurnham, but I believe these are budget numbers, so this would be before it went out to bid.
Yep.
So these are worked up generally on square footage numbers that he has. We would bond this money, set it aside. The project itself would go out to bid, and if the bids came in, preferably we might not spend the entire bonded amount and therefore not incur costs on it.
All right, I do want to open up public comment. I also want to make sure that anyone who has not had a chance to address the board tonight, who may have come in after we heard anyone who wanted to speak at the beginning of the meeting has that opportunity. So if there is anyone additional who would like to come up to the podium, we ask that you give us your name and address. There's a pad to write down your name and address as well. That could certainly happen after you speak, and ask that you keep it to 3 minutes. Is there anyone who didn't get a chance that wishes to speak? All right. If there's someone who wants to come with a new topic up to the podium or ask a question, again, please come up to the podium, name and address.
Hello again. Michael Faulkner, 73 New England Road. A question that, and maybe a general comment that came into mind hearing the conversation. Arnold made a comment about the percentage increase of just the insurance increase alone, and it's a staggering number when you think of the overall increase. I heard John talk about, potentially researching new health insurance options, and I might be paraphrasing that a little bit, but, I hear Dick talk about a plow lease being $25,000, which you all know, you're looking at these numbers all the time, doesn't move the needle at all. So I guess my question is just, are we contractually bound from a health insurance perspective to maintain certain levels of health insurance coverage for our teachers? And I'm not familiar with the contract, so that's why I'm asking the question.
Yeah, we are, because of those contracts, right?
Okay.
So we make, as you can imagine, and I'm quite sure you're not arguing against this, right? It's very important for us to provide adequate health care, quality health care, right, to our employees. And I know that's not what you're asking. I do want to make sure I say that out loud. But we do, across the contracts we have with our employees, negotiate and then kind of codify in those contracts what they are providing in terms of percentage of premiums and in terms of all that kind of stuff.
And the coverage is stipulated,
I'm sorry?
And the coverage, the levels of coverage is stipulated in those contracts. And I would be clear, it's not just for teachers, it would be for all employees.
Yes, in different
But there's another part to that.
Also important to note, we are self-insured.
We're self-insured.
Right, so what we're seeing, Mike, is our actual healthcare costs incurred to us from the actual claims that we're making.
Right.
So, ultimately, that's why I say we have to explore other options, right? We are at a point where this whole entire organization of employees and the town, because we are in partnership with the town employees as well, this is the overall cost of the burden of healthcare right now.
Right.
And just how much it's costing us. That's on top of a renegotiated contract with our teachers in which they're now paying more for their insurance. So we are trying to kind of soften that a little bit, but to your point, it doesn't do much.
And you reminded me, over the last several years, we have also, through those negotiations, changed the structure of that insurance. So we have moved from point of service plans to high deductible savings accounts. We have increased the share that employees contribute. We have increased deductibles. We've made a lot of moves, and we're doing really well. For a 6-year period, our health insurance cost came down 5 of those 6 years. The difficulty is in the most immediate past 5 years, health insurance has gone up 4 of the last 5 years, and this year, most significantly, never like it went up this year. So, yes, we're constantly working on trying to figure out ways to provide our employees with quality health insurance that they deserve and require, and do it in a way to bring the cost down to the town.
But it's important to emphasize that we're self-insured. That is, we don't have a contract with Aetna to give us insurance. But for every year we go out, we are always asking the question: if we went to a commercial insurance company, would it be less than what we're paying? And every time in the last 10 years, it's always come back that we're much better off being self-insured. The difference is that we know exactly what dollar is going where because we're the insurers, as opposed to saying to Aetna, give us the numbers. So we're acutely aware of the rise and fall of these numbers, but this year it's really bad. But we can't simply go out now and say, oh, let's just go and get another company. That would be nice if we could do, and we'll still explore that.
Right. To your point, to the point about self-insurance, though, we're budgeting so that we're prepared to pay what we anticipate that we're going to need to pay.
Right. And then that goes up.
We might have a very good year in which the claims are not nearly as high as we've seen, right? So that's kind of what we're hoping for in terms of there might be a situation in which this is one of those years in which the claims go down where we're actually over budgeted, which would be.
That would be great.
Yeah, but the problem is, we don't know that when we go out for a vote. So the budget has to be made on the basis of this worst projection.
Yeah, and to the point of competitiveness.
Yeah.
So, all right, thank you so much.
No problem.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else? New topic? Or?
If we had a Shaker community gathering to put a roof on Adams, we'd save $1.5 million.
There we go.
Just saying.
All right. Thank you to everyone who participated tonight. It's always helpful for us to get community input. A reminder that we will be here, the Board of Ed will be here again Thursday night, this Thursday at 7:30 here at the high school for another public forum. So we invite members of the public to come and address the board on matters of the budget. Again, we will then, as a board, be meeting next Monday, February 2nd, in this room. It is a special meeting purely on the budget for us to discuss and vote if we're ready. And if we are not ready, that vote will be carried over to our February 9th regular Board of Ed meeting. Again, thank you for joining us. I am going to ask for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right. Thank you very much. Good night.
Thanks, everyone.